Allan Advisors, creating aha moments, presents Aha Business Podcasts. We provide opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. For more information, log on to allanhirschadvisors.com. I'm your host, Allan Hirsch. Welcome to tonight's podcast. My guest tonight is Kristi Sachs of Workflow Mindfulness. Welcome to the show, Kristi.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So what motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work?
I love my job. I used to be in sales. I worked in real estate, which was a very aggressive competition kind of environment, which I grew up in. I was in sports most of my life, so I was always competing and got kind of in that niche. Now I wake up and I'm excited to go to work instead of having that anxiety of what I need to capture in the day to make the money to get to where I need to be. I wake up now on the idea of how can I help people understand how to get out of the hell they've created in their minds. And that has changed my perception of life. I know that it was very difficult for me to get up in the morning before, and some mornings it still is, but mostly it's anticipation and excitement and gratitude for being able to do this every day.
So can you tell me a little bit about mindfulness and what's the whole process that you go through working with businesses, I guess sometimes individuals, but what is the process that you go through to help people become more mindfulness?
The process is pretty simple in words, but in actions is a little difficult. So
that goes with a lot of things.
Yes. So my main foundation of my company is understanding that this is the only moment that's real. So this is the moment where we can create. This is the moment where we can decide how we're going to react to something. And this is the moment where we can truly live our lives. And what happens in life is most people don't live in this present moment. They don't know how to get to this present moment, and they don't know how to stay in this present moment. And the reason is our thoughts, our thought processes. So what happens is, people wake up in the morning and they start their day, and we're kind of have that Groundhog's Day mentality. And lately we don't have it as much because everything's kind of been flipped upside down. So the idea of what I teach for companies is to help their employees find purpose in this uncertainty, finding some kind of new foundation and moving forward in their day. So a lot of people are missing out in that time of their car drives where they're able to relax and prepare themselves for the day, or have that separation of walking out the front door and preparing themselves for work versus where they're at now, where they wake up, they might throw on get out of their pajamas and get in front of their computers and start their day. So their boundaries that they've set over years and years and years have all kind of been expanded. And to hit a boundary and expand a boundary makes us very uncomfortable. So what I've been teaching companies to do is to help their employees get to a place where they feel safe again, where they feel like they're being productive, and to set up healthy boundaries in their work from home life, as well as when they're coming back into campus. I'm finding right now a lot of companies are bringing people back into campus, and we have a lot of people that are very COVID. They're wearing their masks, they wash their hands, they're on top of everything, versus somebody who doesn't really get into the COVID, where they're not wearing their mask, they're sneezing, they're walking around, they have no care when it comes to that. So bringing these people and the in-between all into campus has been a struggle for many, and most of my contact is with the HR department, is trying to find that certainty and that foundation where both of these people can come into work and feel productive and safe. And then working with the owners to understand, hey, maybe in the last 10 to 15 years, you haven't had anything set up to help your employees kind of get over these humps. But this is a time where you need to take a step back and say, what is more important right now, my profit or my company's mental wellness? And a lot of these companies are losing employees because there has been no guidance. So what I do is I come in and I sit down with the company, the HR department, the CEOs and the managers, and try to figure out what is the best way to approach mindfulness with the company, and then use that to, first of all, teach people how to breathe, how to calm down.
Well, breathing is very important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you can figure out breathing, that's going to change your life in general. So that's always my first tool to teach.
Well, yeah, well, if you're breathing wrong, excuse me, and not deeply, it can create tiredness. It can create all kinds of problems. So yeah, one of
Yeah.
the things you have to teach is in the real time is breathing properly.
Absolutely. And the moment of taking those deep breaths, it takes you out of that fight or flight mentality where most of us are there all day long. So we wake up and we're not breathing. We're constantly thinking what is going to happen to us. We're preparing our minds for the worst case scenario. When in reality, when we take those breaths and we calm ourselves down, we realize there's really not a tiger behind me. I'm not falling off a mountain. I'm okay. Where am I right now in this present moment? And how do I want to move forward?
Well, it reminds me when I work with clients, the biggest thing that CEOs and business owners have is fear,
Yes.
which is false expectations appearing real.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard that acronym, but they're using their minds and the neocortex of the brain. They're not using the limbic part of the brain, which is where the decisions are made. And when they make the decision, it's so often it feels good, it feels right, and then they use the neocortex to prove it's right. But it's this whole mindfulness of where you are and trying to throw away that fear.
Yes, it's understanding what fear is and how to use it as your best friend.
Right.
So I know with my fear, since I was very young, I had horrible anxiety and I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to go to school. And I was constantly in that battle. It's exhausting, when you are constantly trying to fight this internal conversation that's telling you you're stupid, you're dumb, you're ugly, you're not going to make it, that you're not worth it. All of these constant little conversations, and you're trying to ignore that all day while you're trying to do your daily routine and the things that you're doing. So with the idea of fear, it's first of all, understanding what fear means to you, because everyone's going to have a different perception. Yeah. Everybody's thoughts and perceptions are going to be completely different based on what they've experienced through life. So when you actually sit down and start to understand what fear is, it's a beautiful trigger to wake you up and say, wait a minute, I feel this fear. What's actually happening in this moment? Am I pulling from my past experiences to make sense of what's happening in this present moment? Am I thinking of something in the future to make sense of this present moment? But when you're here in the present moment, you can truly kind of sit back and take in what's actually happening, not having those past glasses on or those future glasses on, but really being present and saying, okay, I'm going to make a decision based on this information instead of all the other information that I've collected throughout the years. And that starts to change your perception of what's happening in the present moment, so you can change and shift and go in the direction that you want to versus the way you've kind of been drifting through the days in the past.
Well, one of the things you were, I don't know what athletics you participated in, but I was an athlete myself. And if you get those fears in you, you can't compete.
No,
you've got to get through that to be able to compete. I was a goalie in lacrosse, and you get scored on, you got to forget it.
Yes.
and move forward.
Yes.
It's the same thing in life. You've got to forget a problem. Well, you learn from your problems and your mistakes, and you grow.
Exactly. And you don't condemn yourself for the things that you've fallen on. So we go back to a sports analogy, I love football. I'm a Ravens fan, and
so am I.
There you go. So, we look at this quarterback we have now, and he is phenomenal, but you can see that there's moments where he questions himself. And I think the major thing is, and watching sports and professional sports players, you can see like, wow, he's really in his head. And there's many sports professionals that get stuck in their head. And with mindfulness, it really helps you create like, oh, I messed up. Like I just threw an interception. And that moment where the fear kicks in and you start to condemn yourself, like I messed up, I'm no good. You can really take those breaths and say, look, that doesn't exist anymore. This is the only moment that's real. And I'm moving forward with this information on this next play instead of trying to change what has already happened. And I think that in itself, a lot of people get stuck in is that they're constantly getting pulled into those past thoughts, which turn you into, it causes depression when you're pulled out of the present moment and go into something that has happened in the past and try to analyze it and change it and come up with all these different scenarios of what you should have said and what you should have done and how you should have played it. And what you're doing is you're taking yourself out of this present moment where you can make the changes, drop it, and then move forward. And that's the beauty of mindfulness, is understanding the thought process. And once you grasp that what is a thought, that's when you start to change your perception on what a thought is and how it's going to come into your life and evolve into something, instead of saying, this is something I don't need to think about anymore. I don't need it anymore, and I'm going to let it go. And now I can move forward and progressing in a positive way than staying in this negative space that I've created.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. It really does. And being in the moment, being mindful. So, are you finding in certain businesses, certain departments, certain areas are less mindful than others?
I'm finding that a lot of people don't even know what mindfulness is. So when I go in and I start talking to companies, I'm usually hitting the HR department. And right now, that's one of my passions, is to really help them out, because they have everything on their plate. So when when the COVID kind of hit, they were in charge of finding out what the rules are, getting people set up on for technical stuff. So working from home, and then new guidelines, and keeping people in contact with what the manager and the company's doing and what's actually happening in the outside world. So those people in the HR department, in my opinion, are just so overwhelmed. And when I go in and I start talking to them, one of the things that I'm offering and I'm doing right now is just this a free workshop that we're putting together to help them learn how to help themselves. One of the major things that I learned through workflow mindfulness in these companies is the airplane scenario, where you have to put your mask on first before you can help others. And I think the HR department is that key area that a lot of people don't pay attention to. They're that unsung hero of these companies that really have kept everyone together, but nobody has kind of come back and said, hey, maybe you need a day off, or maybe you need something, some way to learn how to enjoy yourself on your days off instead of constantly working at work, and setting up healthy boundaries. And once they learn how to use mindfulness, then they can kind of spread it out into their workplace, or invite me in where we can do workshops and lunch and learn, so we can introduce the idea of breathing and setting up healthy boundaries and understanding how to separate work life from home life.
Okay. Well, when we come back, I'm going to take a commercial break. When we come back, I'll continue this conversation with Kristi Sachs of Workflow Mindfulness. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, and this is AHA Business Podcast.
Hi, Rick Dempsey here. As a former Oriole and Series MVP, I know a lot about winning and championship teams. Today, I am happy to tell you about my award-winning web design and internet marketing team, Adventure Web Interactive. For over 2 decades, many of Maryland's most successful firms have chosen Adventure Web as their strategic partner for web design and online marketing. I can tell you from using them personally, their search engine optimization and social media programs have saved their clients tens of thousands over the traditional pay-per-click digital agency. Visit adventurewebinteractive.com and listen to what clients such as Hercules Fence, TriStar Electric, ABC Rental, Rhine Landscaping, Markdown's Office Furniture, and many more highly successful firms have to say. And don't forget to tell them Rick Dempsey sent you.
Strengthen, protect, and preserve your retirement nest egg. Scott Garceau here for the Stephen J. Sless Group, Baltimore's reverse mortgage specialist. Reverse mortgages have evolved to become a viable retirement tool. Enjoy retirement without monthly mortgage payments, improve cash flow, pay off debt, and stretch retirement savings. Stephen and his team can offer strategies to make housing wealth work for you. If you're 62 or older, learn if a reverse mortgage could help. Visit reversebaltimore.com.
An equal housing opportunity lender. This is not a commitment to lend. Stephen J. Sless, NMLS 298581. PRMI NMLS 3094.
Welcome back to the show. My guest this evening is Kristi Sachs of Workflow Mindfulness. Kristi, thanks for joining me again. But you were talking about working with an HR department. So what are any other departments that you get into in businesses that really look for mindfulness to improve what they're doing?
Yes. So one of the first departments that I was introduced to were like the collection department. And I was introduced to a company. I went in and we found that that's one of the most stressed out. They call out the most. It's an area where people are getting off the phone. They're not feeling great. They're carrying all this anxiety and stress from the last phone call. And they're kind of spreading it around to everyone. Because look, you want to like let go of everything. So you're going to talk to your friends and say, call was terrible or this happened. And it kind of just spreads all this negativity around. So what we do is we come in and we look at departments like the collections department, and we would sit down and say, okay, what is the one thing that is really causing these people to get sick and not want to come into work, or say, hey, I need a healthy day because yesterday was a bad day. And what we do is we pull some tools of mindfulness. Like I said, I always come in and we start with breathing, and I would introduce just ways to kind of drop the call. So it's, you have the phone call. It was a very stressful phone call. And, you know, you sympathize with people. We're human beings. We have empathy. We're empathetic towards each other.
Well,
So
and collections is a very difficult process. You're calling and asking somebody for money, which is very difficult.
Yes. And a lot of those people might be in the same position as the person on the other line. So you're
Right.
identifying with them. So it's very difficult for you to have to ask these hard questions and then drop the call afterwards and then pick up the next line and do it over and over and over again. So what we do is we go in first and we do a workshop, breathing, and then some tools of mindfulness. And then we do follow-up. So there's emails that sent down, hey, just a reminder. And then of course, one of the major things is to teach the managers how to do mindfulness. So when they are dealing with an employee who's overwhelmed and not doing well, how to pull in that breathing and to really connect with the employee and allow them that safe space to let go of the things that are bothering them, and then both of them dumping that and letting that go so they can move on to the next moment. So it's the whole idea from the top, from manager all the way down to employee, but it's that connection of understanding, look, I know that I can go and talk to my manager now and vent and let go of these things and get up and walk away and know that that manager understands that they're not going to hold this against me. They're not going to think about it all day long. They're not going to get angry because I came in and complained about something that was bothering me. So they understand it's dump, let it go, and the manager moves on, the employee moves on, and that just changes the structure of the whole unit to be more positive. So when there is somebody in there that's not having a good time, everyone can kind of rally behind and say, hey, let's take a moment. Let's all just take a moment and breathe. I know it's been stressful. Let's just take those breaths. Let's bring ourselves back to the present moment, and let's all move forward in a positive way.
So what are there other tools besides just going to breathing that you work on? What are some of the other tools, without getting too much into the secret of what you do, but what are some of the tools you use?
Breathing's always first, and then the idea and the concept of a thought. I always start with a thought because when we get into really working with mindfulness, one of the things you focus on are your feelings. But the first thing you need to understand is your thought process. So I call it a train of thought. It's the idea that you have a trigger, something triggers you, and you're like, okay, and you get on this train of thought. Like I walk out the front door. Did I lock the front door? I'm in the car. Did I lock the front door? Did I lock and I'm letting this train of thought just take me on this voyage, and I'm stressing out. And did I do this? And it's understanding that you have a trigger moment. And then in that trigger moment, there's this beautiful pause. And it's really quick when you're getting started. But when you really get into mindfulness, you realize this pause feels like maybe 10 to 15 minutes sometimes, where you can actually come in and say, trigger. So here comes the lady with the ticket. Hey, I want you to get on this train. You have the trigger, pause moment and say, okay, I'm okay. I'm all right right now. There's nothing happening. Why am I thinking about this? Is this something I want to think about it? Nah, I don't need to think about this. I'm going to let this go. And it's the process of understanding the thought coming up. What is this thought and how to let it go? And one of the first meditations that I teach is I call it the 5-minute meditation. And that's all it kind of takes to get started, is understanding that when that thought pops up, how to let it go, and just to allow those thoughts to kind of go past you. Because once you see that pause moment and you start understanding there is a moment where I can communicate with myself and say, I don't need to think about this, then it's the next idea of how do I let that go? And that's that practice with the 5-minute meditation, is truly taking those breaths, letting go, and allowing those thoughts to come up, because a majority of these thoughts are things that we thought about 10 years ago. Somebody talked about on television, somebody said at the store that we're picking up constantly, and they have absolutely nothing to do with us. But we may spend 15, 20 minutes a month to 2 years on a concept that has nothing to do with us, but we get stuck in that train of thought. So the understanding of what a thought is usually it's the breathing, the thought process, and then we kind of dig into other areas depending on what the company's trying to accomplish.
So one of the problems in this coronavirus environment is that mothers and fathers are working from home now.
Yep.
And I guess that's a major problem that one of the things you're working with is HR departments. But how do you deal with parents that now have to deal with homeschooling and still have to work?
So one of the things that I do is always come back to the idea of breathing. So I talk to parents, and what we first find out is where is the time that they have for themselves. And usually, like I was saying earlier, most parents would commute to work. So that time in the car, on the bus, on the train was their time to really kind of contemplate stuff, catch their breath, listen to music, sing real loud, let go of all this anxiety and stress at home. So when they got out of the car or whatever and walked through the front door of work, they were ready for work. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So the first step is to come back into that breathing and to really start saying to myself, like, what is it? Where is it that I have time to take care of myself? Because if I am not stable and okay, everything around me is going to be in chaos, especially in the home setting. So the first thing that I do is I talk about the breathing and then coming back into the idea of when is there time for you? When is that time? And where do you go? Do you go to the car? Do you go in the bathroom and hot? Like where's the places in the house that we can set up that there's a safe place where you can go and maybe meditate or just cry or scribble or whatever you need to do in those moments? Where are those safe places? And then implement that as well with your children. So you're able to wake up in the morning and really set up the structure that kids need. Because right now, a lot of children are just like, they're flowing in the, hey, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to sit in front of this computer. I'm going to do some work. And, I need attention from mommy. So let me go in there, or daddy, let me go in there and aggravate or get what I need from them. And they're on a call. So it's understanding that you need to set up those boundaries for yourself as well as your children. But it all comes back to the idea of what do you have in the home that is a safe place for people to process anything that they're going through. And a lot of people, they set up like a corner in the room, they put like a sheet up and they make like a little meditation area, a reading area. And what they do throughout the day is say, look, I'm going to 15 minutes. It's time for you to go and hang out in the meditation or chill out area, whatever they're calling it. And that's really helped parents and kids to kind of get to a place of relaxation where they can maybe come out and have that conversation of what are you doing at school? How do you feel about things, and process their feelings versus everything just being chaotic and there's nothing to grab onto to bring back that stability that you had before everything happened, and making that new normal that you're implementing in your home.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that I've always done is I do a lot of cooking.
Perfect.
And I'd come home from work with 2 kids, a wife, and I'd spend a half an hour, 45 minutes cooking dinner. My mind would be on that, and it would just wash out everything that happened at work.
Perfect.
And I could be a decent husband and parent. And it was just great. So I'm now in my apartment and I do the same thing. I cook almost every night and I make my own lunches. I don't buy a lot in, and I just get away from the desk and get to the kitchen and prepare something, which gives me that time to be mindful and really forget about what's happened in the day's work.
And that's a perfect scenario, is the idea of it doesn't have to be you sitting in a chair and meditating, closing your eyes. Mindfulness should be used all day long. And I forget to use it. There's sometimes I'm like, oh, I've been on a train for 30 minutes and I'm aggravated. And, so there's times that you get caught in on those trains, but setting up that idea of I'm going to go in the kitchen's my safe space, the kitchen's where I'm going to go and I'm going to chop and let go of the things that I don't need anymore, process what happened during the day, and really allow myself to get back to the present moment. And sometimes I know a lot of parents right now, it's their car. It's just going out and sitting in their car and playing music, maybe driving around the block and just disconnecting from not being in the house into something different. I know one of my favorite places when I started doing this, people were like, where do you go? Like to cry? Because I always tell people to cry. Go cry ugly. You can't do it at home. Do it in your car. I like to go to graveyards. That's one of my spots that if you go to a graveyard and park and get out.
Very few customers complain there.
Exactly. And the fact is, you can cry there. Nobody's going to ask you what's wrong. You know, you don't have to worry about anybody getting involved in what's happening. And it's a really perfect place to just sit and allow yourself, you can do it in the car, but just allow yourself to cry and let go of everything that you need to let go of, and then kind of put yourself back together and go. So that was always one of my places that I would send some of my clients if they have a full house or they're working constantly. Where would be a place that I can go to really like let it all out? And that's one of the places that a lot of people have gone to. You have one of my clients, her favorite spot's the bathroom. She goes in the bathroom, locks the door. She's like, I got 10 minutes, and she goes in there and writes or cries or meditates, whatever she needs to do to let go what she needs to let go of. But that's the beauty of this. This is yours. Mindfulness is about you. It's organic. It's going to grow. It's going to change constantly, but it's yours. It's the thing that you're truly in control of. You're in control of your thoughts, your perceptions, and your feelings, but you don't understand that until you start to do some mindfulness and start to get involved in it. And then you can truly say, hey, I can have control over this and not that. So I'm going to allow that to happen, but be okay in my space. And that's that switch in perception that starts to change how you perceive things around you.
Okay. So what are the next big steps for you in workflow mindfulness? Where do you want to take your business, your practice? And so what are the next big steps?
So right now, one of the things that I said we were focusing on is HR departments and really truly explaining mindfulness so people understand it. And then getting into these businesses. I work with CEOs that is a one-man band or woman band that just focus on sales, and that's kind of their thing, to Fortune 500 companies that have thousands of employees. And what I want to do is I really want to start implementing the idea of mindfulness is going to help your company grow in the correct way, versus I'm going to work this person to death and I'm going to make my money and I really don't care about what they do, to I really care about my employee. I really want to show them that I'm excited that they're part of my company. They've helped my company grow. And how am I going to do this instead of having a pizza party or, something in that effect, but actually giving back to them in a way such as mindfulness, meditation, exercise, different things that they can use for themselves that's going to improve their home life as well as their work life. So that's the direction that I'm going in. But one of the major things that I'm focusing on is wellness centers. I know we're not quite there yet with going back into those places. But one of my passions are the vets. I do work with them, and in the Baltimore area, we've implemented mindfulness, and I volunteer and help them, and I've been helping them through the pandemic. But PTSD and having different outlets of how to get over and work through those things and understand, not even just for the individual, but their entire family. So these wellness centers that I'm looking to open will be based in that idea of where someone can come and truly process and go through the things they need to go through to get to where they need to be. And it's things like floating and acupuncture and massage and mindfulness and yoga. So all of the different things that are out there, putting them in one space so somebody can come in and make their own kind of wellness program for themselves and their families.
Well, I want to thank you, Kristi, very much for being here today. How can our listeners reach you?
The best way to reach me is the website, workflowmindfulness.com. And right now I have a free 20-minute session we have available. And what you do is go in, click and sign up, and you get 20 minutes with me. And what I do is I just chat with you. And sometimes in that 20 minutes, you might learn something that's going to help you throughout your life and you're good to go and you can keep going. And sometimes it kind of opens up your eyes to see like, this is something I really want to work on. I want to introduce this to my family. I want to introduce this to my business. So that free 20-minute consultation is there for businesses as well as individuals. So yeah, just get in contact, check out the website and sign up. I'd love to talk to you and give you information of mindfulness and how it can help you. Well,
again, thank you very much for being here. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, your host. To reach me, call 443-977-4500 or visit my website. That's AllanHirschAdvisors.com. And you can listen to the podcast and past shows wherever you get your podcast. I'm Allan Hirsch, and this has been AHA Business Podcasts.